What's up, everyone? This is Silver Slayer, and welcome to your daily silver stacking video. Thank you for tuning in. We have a big video, a very big, important video today, folks. The million-dollar question is, how much is enough silver? Well, today I found an article that not only talks about how much is enough, they give an actual number. Usually people are going to beat around the bush. Well, this article gives an actual number, and not only that, they talk about how much gold you need as well. But Silver Slayer, right? Everyone has different financial situations, different buying timeframes, selling timeframes, exit strategies, different reasons for stacking. Well, guess what? This article even breaks down month-to-month income from a $500 to $20,000 amount. And they go over the 6-month, 1 year, 18-month, all the way to 5 years for gold and silver. So everyone will be able to reflect upon themselves, and the math is done for you. This is an incredible article. It's titled "How Much Gold and Silver is Needed for a Financial Crisis." Now, usually coming from someone who is, trying to turn into the precious metals world, that maybe just wants to see what's realistic. And you got to remember, though, just because you can buy something doesn't mean you can afford to buy it. A lot of people can buy a Tesla, but they can't afford a Tesla. You have to remember when you're stacking, and you can even see in this chart, even if you're just putting in $100 a month or something minimal, over time it adds up. A lot of us have this mentality of, oh, silver's about to skyrocket tomorrow. I got to buy right now all the silver, spending 75% of your paycheck. And then you can't cover your living expenses, having to sell your silver at a loss, usually a couple months later, or when a medical bill or your car breaks down. You don't want to do that. You can afford to buy little ounces of silver, and I promise you, over the next couple of years, you will have a nice size stack. So before we jump into this article, I also wanted to show you guys something. The Silver Stacking podcast is live. 578 subscribers. The second podcast is going to be airing on Friday. We did the first one. It's an hour long. Amazing feedback, by the way. 1.6 thousand views in 4 days for the first video. Very good reviews. Me and the co-host Investing with TJ. It's a beautiful thing, right? We don't just push record and just start the podcast. We have different things planned out, different categories, different topics we want to talk about. TJ's a chartered financial analyst, so he's breaking down the weekly market recap and going over the technicals, and he'll bring in different topics. We throw in some silver memes. We're going to be having special guests soon. It's definitely a new type of format for silver stackers, and I think that's beautiful, especially since we are giving away silver to the first 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to be eligible to win some silver, make sure you go subscribe and click the bell. Now let's jump into this. How much gold and silver is needed for a financial crisis? So here's how much gold and silver you need for the crisis. And I like how they're so direct about it. Most of you reading this are already convinced of the need to own gold and silver. But as you continue to accumulate, a question naturally arises. How much do you need? Have you ever thought about that? Honestly, have you ever thought about, what's enough? Is it 500 ounces? Is it 1,000 ounces? If you do some math, and let me bust out my phone real quick, the calculator, because when you really do look at the numbers, it's a very humbling experience. I remember the first time I did this, probably about a year ago. It really shocked me. So let's say 100 ounces, right? Let's say 100 ounces, and you want to sell when silver is $100. That's $10,000. That's to a college kid, maybe a teenager. That's not bad, $10,000. But a lot of us are talking about retirement. We're talking about paying mortgage on our house, or something along the lines of a lot more than $10,000, if you get what I'm saying. So let's say 1,000 ounces, and you sell at $50. That's $50K. but let's say someone accumulates 5,000 ounces. Now, the hard part is you're never going to know what price you really sell at, right? I mean, it could be $50, or you could be selling a little bit of your stack at 100, 150, 200, 500. It's not like we all know, so you have to really try to center your attention around the price range where you're willing to let go. Is it in the hundreds, or do you think silver's more valuable and you won't even sell at $100? So let's say 5,000 ounces and you're going to sell at $200. That's $1,000,000. 5,000 ounces, you're going to sell at $200. That's $1,000,000. 5,000 ounces is a lot of silver, but it's not unrealistic if you're someone who's been stacking for 10, 15 years. The the reality of silver hitting at $200 is likely. It actually is if you think about it. Even if you look at the gold to silver ratio, if the gold to silver ratio is at 16 to 1, that would already put silver at $250. But we're talking about $10,000 gold, what was the $10,000 gold, $500 silver, which is the 20 to 1 ratio that TJ and I covered in the last podcast. And when you're looking at the reality and looking at these numbers, especially at forwards, it's not that crazy. So might be something to put in perspective. 100 ounces, it sounds like a lot, it looks like a lot, but if you're someone really trying to retire or make some type of big financial gain, you're going to need more. And those are just that's just some food for thought. So that coming into this article, remember those numbers. So imagine the sick feeling in your gut if we get to the next financial crisis and you suddenly realize you didn't buy enough bullion to get through it. For this reason alone, it's worth thinking about how many ounces you might need. More and more investors are recognizing this, and we receive the question about it. The wording varies. The basic question is the same, though. How much physical gold and silver should I own to be in good shape should an economic crisis hit? And why traditional advice is meaningless in a crisis. Traditional financial advice is that gold should compromise 5-10% of assets, 10 to 20% if you're not including home equity. But Mike and I are convinced that the amount won't cut it in the turmoil we believe is ahead. What passes for normal advice could be financially devastating in abnormal times. That's a really good point. If you're listening to financial advice from someone who's more from the stock side of things, then yes, they're going to downplay precious metals. They're going to look at precious metals as just the risk part of the thing, trying to, I guess, preserve some wealth in terms of a recession, depression, but at the end of the day, we all know where the dollar's headed. They're not putting that into consideration. They're not looking at the dollar losing 98% of its purchasing power with trillions of dollars being thrown out that we don't have. They're looking at the dollar where it's at right now might incorporate, right, inflation. But as true silver stackers know, I would rather have a lot more in my portfolio in precious metals than stocks or something along those lines. So 5 to 10% is from the quote unquote normal financial advisors, and I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just saying, and this article says it as well. They worded it perfect. Normal advice could be financially devastating in abnormal times. Furthermore, the lower your overall net worth, the less meaningful these percentages are. And in a time of a crisis, you will need absolutes, not percentages. If you've struggled to determine if you have enough physical gold and silver, Gold Silver has created a practical guide. This is a measuring stick. It's more effective. It's a more effective way to gauge if your allocation will be sufficient. And it's kind of what I just did, but I really like that they did all the numbers, right? They went over, different incomes, 6 month all the way to 5 years. So this is good. This brings up a rather obvious question. When you sell your stash, what will you do with the proceeds? When you sell your stash, what are you going to do with the cash? It's a good point. Transferring fake money into real money back to fake money is kind of contradicting, isn't it? Well, a lot of us, and I've asked this question on my channel before, a lot of us might sell 15% back to cash, pass The rest down to your kids or grandkids. Some people are never going to sell. It really is dependent on you. That's why silver stacking is so beautiful. There's no wrong way to stack. So the point is you will buy something with the proceeds, not everyone, but and that's the starting point in knowing if you have enough ounces. Will your stash be sufficient enough to support your standard of living during a major financial disorder? No, there's no single right answer to this. In other words, you shouldn't ask how much silver does Mike Maloney own, the base of your buying habits on that, though I'm sure he'd be flattered. Each person's circumstances are different, and that means having a unique strategy for yours. And that's why I really want this to be more of a reflectional type of video. I want you and be realistic with yourself. Don't try to, and I've done this before. When I started stacking, heavily influenced by channels that were making a lot more money than I was washing dishes at 19 years old. When I'm watching Silver Slacker unbox 1,000+ ounces in one video, and I'm sitting there working minimum wage, right? You got to be realistic to yourself. If you don't, it's not going to help you. It's only going to hurt you. So if you're someone who can only afford, remember I said afford, just because you can buy a certain amount of ounces doesn't mean you can afford it. If you're someone that can afford, let's say 20 ounces a month, then do it. But if you can buy 20 ounces a month, but you can't afford it, then you might want to try 10 or 15. Be realistic. So I don't want to go over what to expect during a crisis. We've talked about that. I want to really go over these numbers. So they go over gold. I don't want to focus too much on gold, but there is some interesting things here because it goes by ounces. So $500 a month, that's 0.3 ounces or 0.38 ounces of gold. In 1 year, that's 4.6 ounces. That's a lot. Most people don't have 4 ounces of gold. And look in 5 years, 23 ounces. Look at $20,000 a month. And this is at a $1,300 gold price, by the way. So it's still pretty similar. Gold's at $1,500 now. Look at $20,000 a month. That's 15 ounces of gold in 6 months. That's 92. 5 years, that's 923. Now, obviously, nobody is going to be buying 15 ounces of gold in a month. Nobody should be. I mean, if you can afford $500 of gold a month, then yes, that will pay off. But I would be putting a lot more into silver. Now let's look at silver. $500 a month, that's 25 ounces. 6 months, it's 150 ounces. 5 years, that's 1,500. Now let's look at, let's say, $1,000 a month, that's 50 ounces. Let's say you have a good job, you're putting $5,000 in per month. Well, that's 250 ounces a month. That's 1,500 in 6 months, and that's all the way to 15,000 ounces in 5 years. So let's put 15,000 ounces, and then you sell at $200. That's $3 million, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I want to be more realistic, though. Let's say you put $500 in a month. So in 5 years, you'll have 1,500 ounces, and you sell at $200. That's $300,000. And that's putting in $500 a month, which a lot of people can't afford. And that's still $300,000 in 5 years. And that's selling at $200 silver. Note that, and this is buying silver at $20. So, round these numbers down a little bit. But just know that if you're buying what you can afford, because that's a guarantee, not a guarantee, but if you're buying what you can afford, not what you think you can buy, the reality of you holding on to the silver is much greater, right? So you can make a good amount, and that's only in 5 years. Think about people that are holding for 10, 15 years, putting $500 in or even $100 in. You can see how this can be life-changing. A lot of people think that it's just preservation of wealth, but it's also an investment, especially if you're buying other coins like pandas, kookaburras that are appreciating on top of spot price. Because remember, this is all from spot price. Think about pandas, kookaburras, the ones that double, triple, quadruple over time. You could be making some real money here, but it does all require to be buying and holding. Buying and holding. Remember, just because you can buy something doesn't mean you can afford to buy it. That's so important. I cannot stress that enough. Understanding the true value of a dollar, understanding how to manage money is just as important. And I don't recommend people start investing into silver before they can start managing money. Because if not, like I said, you're going to end up selling the silver and usually at a loss because you're buying premiums and you won't get that premium back for time. It's just not worth it. You won't even break even. So let's look at this. $500 a month supplement would need 300 ounces of silver to get through 1 year, or 1,500 ounces for 5 years. If you want $3,000 a month, you'll need $1,800 for 1 year, $9,000 if it lasts 5 years. Of course, we can use both gold and silver to meet expenses. For $1,000 a month, you'll need 9 ounces of gold and 600 ounces of silver to get through a 2-year crisis period. These amounts may look high, but keep in mind that if you don't save in gold and silver now, you'll be forced to spend a whole lot more in currency later, which is a good point. And I like how instead of looking at this from a stacking perspective, they did it for a duration of crisis. So let's say, and we can look at it that way too, which is the same thing, but just looking at it from more of a survival perspective. If you make $4,000 a month, and let's say you have 200 ounces of silver, selling it at $20, you would last, 18 months with that. So you can look at it both ways, but at the end of the day, how much silver do you need? It's down there. It's up to you. It really is up to you. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this video up here. If you thought this video was 1, educational, 2, informational, 3, at least entertaining, make sure to hit the like button. I post daily videos. Also, go check out the Silver Stacking podcast. Highly recommend you go check out the first podcast. It was really good. We already filmed the second podcast. It's amazing. I edited it down today. It's such a good podcast. We covered so much stuff. We got even better at it. I mean, just the flow, the way we ease into the new topics. It's a very good podcast. We got some special guests coming on. And just remember that if you're in the first 1,000 subscribers, you're going to be eligible to win some silver. So you don't want to miss it. Plus, every day, we're going to be posting segments from the podcast. So even if you don't watch the hour-long podcast, at least you'll be able to catch some of the important topics. So that's just another, layer. We post daily videos on there as well. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this video up here. Thanks for tuning in. This was Silver Slayer. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.